2023 was a huge year for gaming. Hogwarts Legacy, The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, Baldur's Gate 3, Jedi Survivor, Diablo 4, Super Mario Wonder, Starfield, all the remakes, Forspoken, Redfall, Golem. The odd stinker aside, we ate well, and everyone's backlog now has hundreds of additional hours of games that none of us will ever touch. Some called 2023 the best year in gaming, surpassing the legendary 1998 release card. It was a huge year for indie studios too, who competently threw down with the AAA giants and walked away with a respectable slice of the gamer pie. Yet, in December of 2023, when the gamer bellies were full and their bank accounts were empty, an indie game emerged from early access to the triumphant fanfare of... When I search for Bloodwest reviews on YouTube, the top hit is an 8-minute video from Gaming Bolt. No IGN, no GameSpot, no Polygon, no Kotaku. My boys, The Summer of Mark and Slimbratsky, both small creators, even make the top 10 results. They get it. Their reviews are excellent. Watch them after this video. A grave injustice has been committed. Online communities were abuzz when Bloodwest's early access opened in February of 2023. Everyone was talking about the cool cowboy stealth game. Hell, before I had a chance to play it, people were telling me I'd love it. So what the hell happened in December of 2023? Where was the mainstream coverage? Bloodwest is the sleeper hit of 2023 you've likely never heard of, let alone played, and that's unacceptable. I know it sounds like this video will be a rant on games media. Perhaps, in places, it will be. My goal, though, is to showcase how great and important Bloodwest is as an ambitious stealth hybrid. Bloodwest was inspired by innovative giants including the Thief and Stalker franchises and Hunt Showdown. If that doesn't jumpstart your ticker, then you're as alive as Ubisoft's share price. Let's discover why Bloodwest was my game of the year for 2023 and why it should be turning more heads. Yeah, the video title might be a little clickbaity. Don't hate the player, hate the game. This isn't a review, it's an analysis of Bloodwest's components, but many treat my videos as reviews and that's fine. We need more games like this in the industry, and if you decide to try Bloodwest on the strength of this video, then I consider that a win. Welcome to the conversation. If you've heard the phrase thief with guns, then you probably know who Dave Oshry is. Thief with Guns became the promotional tagline for publisher-developer Newblood's early access game Gloomwood, which looks amazing by the way. You know what though? Bloodwest beat them to the finish line to claim that title. Thief with Guns is a great functional description for Bloodwest's gameplay, even if it doesn't capture the breadth of what's on offer. I rarely get that incredible thief feel from games which are outside the titular franchise, but Bloodwest delivers it like a potent swig of moonshine. Bloodwest's stealth is rudimentary but highly functional. Sight and sound are important, adding dimension to stealth. Both have icons and an indicator bar which grows as enemies become aware of the Gunslinger. Most importantly, detection is measurable and consistent. It's the consistency which so many games botch, dumping failure on players with little rhyme or reason, or, worse, forcing random elements into detection. You don't need to force stealth on players. They'll choose it when it can be reliably measured, understood, and replicated. Thief acknowledged this simple tenet over 25 years ago with the inclusion of a light gem and enemy alert states. Bloodwest's detection system is fair and measurable, and it's supremely competent at conveying the necessary information to players. If you fail stealth, it's a skill issue. The Gunslinger can throw rocks to distract enemies. This is a competent system which can lure victims away from a pack for easy culling, bunch them together for a dynamite kill, or divert attention when you're about to be discovered. In the early access builds, you could spam the rock and lead enemies around like a gaggle of corporate farmer apologists. Developers Hyperstrange fixed that, and throwing a second rock while enemies are suspicious now sends them lunging for your throat. Distractions are a powerful staple of the stealth genre, and Hyperstrange have found the perfect balance of clutch and punishment. Bloodwest's stealth is better than some quadruple A stealth-focused games. Hundreds of millions of dollars versus the modest budget Hyperstrange scraped together. Take a moment. Let that sink in. The point of the stealth system isn't to creep up on prodigal daughters for a peck on the cheek. You want to get more intimate, and nothing says, "till death do us part," like an axe to the skull. Stealth is a vehicle for the violent stealth kill, something you want to pull off often in Bloodwest. Surprise attacks do bonus damage, and even the humble rusty knife is transformed with such an advantage. And boy, don't enemies go down. From the tutorial area to the end credits, I never grew bored of exploding skulls, and the carnage became its own reward. Bloodwest's sound design is sublime, elevating the action in a way only great sound can. The the thunky weight of an axe cleaving a skull, the pulpy patter of brain matter scattering across the ground. It heightens the feel of a cold-blooded desperado doing dirty deeds. The simplicity of light and heavy attacks masks the deadly potential of each weapon. In many shooters, melee is the fallback, the desperate measure, the last resort. In Blood West, it's a viable playstyle, supercharged by the right strategy. Guns, however, are the true standout. Every gun sounds like it'd put a charging rhino 10 feet under. You almost sense the flash and sting of ignited gunpowder in the nostrils. This is a masterclass of sound design, demonstrating through audio the devastating potential of every bullet. That isn't hyperbole. Like the axe, knife or sword, the pistol, shotgun and rifle are devastating if you catch enemies unaware. Wanna guess how I got most of the kills for this playthrough? Just because you pack heat doesn't mean you can't be sneaky. Blood West is surprisingly generous with audio detection. You can gun a creature down in one room and, at worst, the others inside might come to investigate. If anything, it might be a touch too lenient, but it enables a nice flow of carnage, letting players draw more prey into the iron sight for an easy kill. Stealth kills haven't felt this satisfying in a long time, but god damn was it worth the wait. Great audio pervades the experience, enhancing the satisfaction of mastery and contributing to the mystique of the gunslinger. We don't need to be told he's dangerous, we don't need lengthy exposition or even a thrilling cutscene to understand the gunslinger's ability. We see it in the fall of the hammer, in the crash of violence, in the collapsing headless bodies. Characterization through action. Show, don't tell. Sergio Leone would be proud. There's an innate satisfaction to mastering Blood West stealth. Surprisingly, for a game with a bounty of guns, stealth never loses potency throughout the campaign, and it never trivializes encounters. Sure, enemies get tougher and some need a few bullets to bring down, but the gunslinger can largely remain a stealthy, single-shot predator with the right combination of weapons, artifacts, and strategy. Not bad for a stealth combat mashup. Pretty damn good, in fact. Blood West's loot game is another hallmark of the Thief franchise. Every chapter is littered with loot, which encourages explorers and kleptomaniacs to dig into every corner and crevice for a payday. Hyperstrange have been particularly crafty in hiding loot, and someone in their office is fascinated with dunnies.
What do we have here?
The loot placement is telling you something, if you care to listen. Slow down, pay attention, be curious.
I said slow down, dickhead!
Gold nuggets and teeth aren't the only things you'll find out there. Safes are rare but offer great bounty, containing cowboy bucks, bullets, and artifacts. The catch? You gotta have a key. Keys are deviously hidden in each map, adding further incentive to explore the murky landscape. I love the safes. They offer a sprinkle of spice, a concrete mid-term goal to shoot for, and the payout is worth the effort. Powerful artifacts and legendary weapons are also spread across every map, and they're worth seeking because they can't be bought. Don't expect to grow powerful off whatever the traders sell. You're gonna have to range the plains and brave the caves to find your best self. This ain't the game to speedrun the main objectives or get impatient. You'll hurt. You'll hurt bad. I adore Blood West's loot game. I enjoy being rewarded for being a nosy prick and jamming my face into every crack. Oh my, that's a bit saucy. Thief used this design in spades, and the enticement of more loot is why I always play Thief on expert difficulty. Topping the Thief homage is the Gunslinger, voiced by Garrett himself, Stephen Russell. If you don't know who Stephen Russell is, we need to have words. Russell's rumbling dialogue imparts character through the one-liners uttered with each kill or piece of loot grabbed. The Gunslinger can be wry and humorous one moment and acidically vengeful the next. Russell, ever the consummate professional, breathes life into the undead Gunslinger, but, more importantly, draws a connection to the master thief I love, evoking through association a feeling of stalking those familiar hallways, liberating the obscenely wealthy of their prized trinkets. The Gunslinger was originally voiced by internet personality and voice actor Jake the Voice Parr. Something happened during development, possibly caused by Parr himself if the Twitter threads I read are accurate, and Hyperstrange dropped Parr from the role. As much as I like Stephen Russell, I enjoy many of Parr's lines. There was an edge and heat to his delivery which fit the Gunslinger perfectly. Having said that, attaching Stephen Russell's name to anything is a mark of quality, and Blood West is no exception. Now that I've put the Sire-phobes to sleep, a quick chat about combat. Yeah, it's here, and yeah, going loud is a viable playstyle thanks to Blood West's build flexibility, though it has tighter requirements than stealth. Bullets and booze are in short supply, which does you no favours if you're a shit shot. Enemies get animated when you roll them up, and nailing headshots as they bob and sway is tricky. These points form part of the difficulty curve, which I've heard that some people hit. The Gunslinger is a glass cannon, able to meet punishing damage while only able to stomach a little in return. It only takes a few whacks before he's kissing the dirt, initially at least, and that happens quick once you're surrounded. These qualities might evoke visions of Doomslayer dooming his best eternal, but that isn't how Blood West operates, and I'd wager that this misconception is why some have rebounded off the game. You can play like this, kinda, but not right away. Blood West's gunplay is slower, more considered. Players are strongly encouraged to use iron sights when aiming, and the animation for shots and reloads can take time to finish. This lends more weight to each mouse click, and it injects energizing tension into each encounter. A missed shot could mean a lengthy reload, and a lengthy reload in the chaos of battle is like running around with your jocks around your ankles. Most of my fights came from fluffing a shot, or accidentally aggroing a group of enemies, then having to put boot to anus. There was some butthole clenching encounters, but nothing which good preparation and resource management couldn't handle. Here's a hint if you're struggling. Turning tail is a valid strategy. Kinda reminds me of Stalker, and the influence doesn't end there. Blood West has a wider gameplay loop. Players leave the sanctuary of their camp to explore, kill, and gather loot, then return to camp to sell, buy, and stash items. This gear loop emulates Stalker's intrinsic and highly influential exploration, and it demands many of the same skills. Traders at each camp trade limited yet crucial supplies, and even sell specific artifacts and legendary weapons, which are exorbitantly priced, yet powerful. These items are often worth buying and give players another mid-term goal to work toward. Trader stock doesn't replenish often, and once unique items are bought, they never appear again, but traders become a buffer against the constant threat of empty pockets. Traders can be cheesed by reloading the game, which forces a restock, but supplies still cost money. Supporting the sorties into the barren lands is the personal stash. Just as Stalker encouraged stashing gear for later retrieval, Blood West features a personal chest which is available at almost every camp. The camp becomes your 100 Rads bar, a place to rest, restock, and listen to a drunk doomer moan about a black raven. Preparation before each outing is important. Players learn more about dealing with the enemies as they explore the barren lands. Different ammo types, noiseless attacks, area of effect items, elixirs, weapon and artifact buffs. There's a surprising number of options, and the ability to shift strategies with a change of weapon or artifact means that it's all too enticing to fill your precious inventory space with useful gear. Stalker aficionados will love Blood West's inventory management, which favours physical space over a weight limit. Loadout decisions are no less impactful, and, as always, there's no wrong answer. As players slip further into their playstyle, they'll better understand what to bring and what to leave at home. I love this iterative assessment, and it never really stops throughout the game. Blood West's maps are a chef's kiss. Each of the game's 3 chapters is a dedicated area which is almost completely free to roam. Want to explore that cave? Go ahead. Curious about that fort over yonder? Poke your nose inside, say hi. Want to paint the town red? Plenty of opportunities for that too. The open worlds are liberating, empowering, and intimidating. It can be hard to choose where to begin, but there are so many neat locations to visit and extensive cave systems to get lost in that no matter where you go, you'll always find adventure. Maps are big enough to house many interesting locations, but not so big that they're overwhelming to explore. Hyperstrange have struck a good balance between size and density without areas feeling grossly gamified. Beds are spread across each map, acting as rest points and fast travel hubs to make moving around easy. Fast travel has a cost, a green raven skull to return to base and a chicken head to travel between beds. Although players will find plenty of these items in the wild, I like that there's a cost for fast travel. It adds a touch more weight to what would otherwise be a thoughtless decision. There's an expectation that players will explore, that they will seek advantage and resources in the moonlit wastes. This isn't a massive open-world RPG where the side tasks are cosmetic filler, nor is it a boomer shooter where a laser focus on the objective wins the day. Skipping exploration is a grave mistake which ends in the grave. Not only would players miss a swag of helpful items to fill out their playstyle, they'd also lack the necessary resources to complete the chapter. I'm not saying that it couldn't be done, but it'd be a rough way to go for first-time players. Stalker embodied many of these principles, as discovered by a friend recently when he played Shadow of Chernobyl for the first time. He hit a hard wall at the power plant where his meager store of radiation-purging items, inadequate armor, and lack of artifacts weren't enough to overcome the severe spike in radiation. Blood West isn't nearly as demanding, but squaring off with the end of chapter boss half-cocked is a great way to get full dead. The open design of each map and the cautious gunplay make each location feel like a chessboard, encouraging you to knock pieces over one by one until the spoils are yours. The way enemies are grouped sometimes demands prioritization, which is a fun standalone puzzle. The approach is always left to players, and as with everything else in Blood West, it shakes down to preference. Stealth fans will recognize and appreciate the pattern, minus the failure states that come with pure stealth games. Resource management is a constant in Blood West. Whether it's counting the bullets in the cylinder, watching supplies dwindle, or optimizing inventory space, there's always a meta to the gunslinging and adventuring which I thoroughly adore. Inventory management feels rewarding when you Tetris a full backpack in clever ways to make space for that last trinket, and you want to take as much as you can. Supplies aren't plentiful, but it's hardly as strict as the survival horror routes it takes clear inspiration from. I've read comments that the limited bullets and enemy difficulty are too punishing, and I'd agree that Fortnite is an ImSim before I agree to that. First, Blood West is a stealth game. It encourages stealth melee from the opening moments, and the lack of bullets should be a strong indicator of the suggested playstyle, at least for the opening hour. Second, there are skills, weapons, and artifacts which can farm extra loot, ammo, and cash. You won't get them in the first 5 minutes, so you'll have to johnny up for a bit. Third, there are ways to increase health and decrease damage taken. If you insist on having your face eaten, consider these options. Fourth, enemy respawns can be manipulated to farm more loot. More on that in a bit. To really drive this nail home, here's my stash near the end of Chapter 1, and again at the end of Chapter 2, and near the end of Chapter 3. I could have sold most of this stuff, but I wanted to prove a point. Most of these resources were collected in the wild, with occasional top-ups from traders. See how much cash I had at the end of each chapter? I initially used a build to maximize XP, loot drops, and inventory space. In Chapter 2, I bought a rattler pistol, which gave me 5 buckaroos for each headshot. And guess what? I used guns, occasionally in Chapter 1, mostly on the tougher enemies, which are plentiful, and I used them exclusively for all of Chapters 2 and 3. Why suffer? You can have your cake and damn well eat it too. The Ace of Spades artifact carried this strategy, dropping decent stacks of additional loot and ammo from enemies, which ensured that I often returned to camp with more ammo than when I left. Blood West's artifact system is another nod to Stalker. Too many games use the tired excuse of basic stat boosts, offering a little health here, a little damage there, but nothing which truly excites gameplay. Blood West has artifacts which are guilty of this, but the majority are thoughtfully balanced, particularly the ones found in Chapters 2 and 3. Many later artifacts have powerful buffs, but also incur a penalty which can only be removed by dying or drinking a revival tonic. This risk versus reward loadout is fantastic. It pulls players up, forcing them to consider whether what they're doing is the right strategy. Some artifacts synergize and encourage certain playstyles. It's a glorious feeling when you find an artifact stack which works perfectly with your preferred playstyle, and it's agonizing when you find another powerful artifact and must decide whether to sub it in. It's like having an NBA team comprised of the East and West All-Stars and agonizing over who to put on the court. Blood West's artifacts can often be freely swapped, which makes planning for certain situations much easier. Perhaps you don't want to stealth all the time, but some enemies are too tough to tackle right away. You're not a hammer, and every problem isn't a nail. Carry stealth-focused artifacts and sub them in as needed. Can't afford that shiny gun that the trader is selling? Equip a price reduction stack and buy it on the cheap. Like Stalker, it's the versatility of Blood West's artifacts that makes them hard to let go. You'll want to take a swag of artifacts on each outing, and that's a good sign that this is a well-designed system. Artifacts aren't perfect though. Some buffs are a little plain, playing the stat boost angle. Some artifacts are borderline redundant, like the acid damage reduction from an acid gland. Acid isn't a common damage type, and there's little reason to equip this artifact. I would have also loved to see more direct synergy with other artifacts, like the playing cards, where the buffs increase if multiple cards are equipped. I'm also a fan of items providing a unique benefit to give them greater staying power. Some items already have this, like the powder horn, which grants a 40% chance of the buffalo rifle not spending a bullet when it's fired. But the iterative process which Hyperstrange went through while developing Blood West is clear in the progression and increased complexity of artifact buffs, and some of the earlier artifacts are plain by comparison. Complementing the artifacts are legendary weapons. These unique weapons have a special name and model, and most are found in the wild, making exploration that much more important. All have impressive buffs, and some even synergize, like the bone knife and spirit bow, which are bought from the shaman in Chapter 1. The bone knife leeches enemy health with each kill, while the spirit bow spends a little health to shoot an ethereal arrow. These weapons were clearly designed with each other in mind, and they're a potent ammo-free solution to most of Chapter 1's enemies. Legendary weapons are another feather in the cap of a surprisingly diverse build system, and they present an additional layer of strategy. They are the heart of any build, and, like the artifact system, they can be swapped on the go for different results. For example, instead of carrying silver bullets, I bought the Orb of Night, which also does increased damage to spirit enemies. Instead of using the rare silver bullets, I used Orb of the Night with regular ammo instead. The Totem of Souls also offers blessings to get players on their feet or to boost their existing buffs, for a modest gold coin. Blessings are powerful, bestowing significant boosts to many of the major mechanisms. Blessing of the Cat to avoid getting a curse when dying, Blessing of the Fox to improve stealth, Blessing of the Bear to increase melee damage, and Blessing of the Magpie to increase the chance of finding gold items when looting. Whatever players are lacking, a blessing may be the fix. Except skill, you're out of luck there. The final component of character progression is skills. Players earn XP for each kill, and each level up awards skill points which can be assigned. Blood West's skill tree is very safe. That's to say it's a little underwhelming when compared to weapon and artifact buffs. There are some neat skills, but nothing which charges a playstyle or changes the dynamic of play. Rifles, shotguns, rattler pistols, and buffalo rifles have no associated skills, and this is further highlighted by the 6 skills related to melee damage. Bows and crossbows are underrepresented too. The steady aim skill, which reduces weapon sway, seems pointless, as even when the gunslinger is drunk, guns barely sway. I sway more while taking a piss. Level 3 of the Gunslinger skill unlocks fanning for revolvers, but revolvers are outclassed by rattler pistols from Chapter 2 onwards, and weapon-specific buffs are easily outclassed by general damage buffs from artifacts. It would have been nice to see revolvers and bows maintain a unique relevance throughout the campaign, but the current skills, artifacts, and weapon buffs don't support them. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't at least a little disappointed in the available skills, but there's still enough fun here in moulding a playstyle, and over time skills do give an edge. Death. Master Chief's testicles. This one's controversial. Blood West punishes death with soul flaws, which are minor debuffs to stamina, stealth, etc. If players already have 3 soul flaws and die again, they receive a curse, which is a significant debuff. I've read a bunch of complaints about this system being too punishing, and I don't get it. Gold coins are everywhere, and equipping one prevents soul flaws on death. If you die often, equip gold coins. Problem solved. Revive tonics remove soul flaws and curses, and while they're rarer than other items, they're another way to cleanse debuffs. There's also a weapon which clears soul flaws and curses if you nail 5 consecutive headshots with it. Even the Totem of Souls has a way to clear soul flaws and curses. You can easily avoid and cure soul flaws and curses, so what's the problem? The debuffs ensure you don't run around with your rooster in your hand, cocksure and carefree. It's a punishment for being careless, and it encourages a little more consideration, in contrast to the typical save scumming other games let you get away with. The Gunslinger's death also causes random enemy respawns across the map, and for anyone whining about that, there's a ring in Chapter 1 which prevents respawns if you kill an enemy while it's equipped. Respawns are a blessing though, as more enemies means more loot and ammo drops. You can abuse the crap out of this system by sleeping, which also respawns enemies, then carving through them again for a hefty payday. You can do this endlessly. Infinite cash and ammo. You're welcome. I didn't once feel cheated by death. When I died, it's because I was a crap shot, thought I could dodge a wrench, or was writing checks my ass couldn't cash. I guess this is a long-winded way of saying that my death was a skill issue. And yet, the challenge gradient is good. There are moderate jumps in difficulty at the beginning of each chapter as players wrestle with new enemies and probe their weaknesses, but a steady feed of new weapons, artifacts, and lore soon level the playing field. This is a world where knowledge is gold, and knowing more about the enemy can save headaches and ammo. The open world allows players to probe its defenses, to counter, parry, riposte, or retreat. Finding an area too tough? Try a different approach or go elsewhere and explore. You're not beholden to a singular path, and this freedom allows you to bypass, ignore, and return to areas when you feel ready. Blood West has multiple gameplay loops which expand and engage players constantly throughout the experience. In any given moment, there are systems vying for attention. Resource evaluation, shooting and looting, exploration, encounter planning, character build adjustments. I was engaged and active every moment I spent in Blood West from hour 1 to hour 31, and that's damn refreshing. This magic ingredient, right here, is the reason Blood West beat Tears of the Kingdom as my 2023 Game of the Year. As incredible an achievement as Tears of the Kingdom was, it had a lot of empty space. Yes, I know that was by design. And many of the repeatable activities, like shrines, grew repetitive. This isn't a failing of Tears of the Kingdom so much as a broader symptom of open worlds and the need to fill them with meaningful activities. And this is coming from a long-time Zelda fan. I've loved the franchise since Ocarina of Time, so if anything was going to be a slam dunk, it was a follow-up game to Nintendo's ambitious new direction for the franchise. Congratulations, Hyperstrange, you beat a Zelda game. Blood West, as you've seen from the footage, is set against a Weird West backdrop. We don't get many Weird West games, despite the frontier setting's mystique, corruption, and pervasive sense of the unknown being the perfect breeding ground for dark campfire tales. Having said that, Blood West stands among a few recent Weird West titles, including Evil West by Flying Wildhog Studios, which I've covered on the channel, link in the description, and Weird West by Wolfeye Studios, which is co-led by ex-Arcane Studios veteran and industry legend Rafael Colantonio. Fun fact, I used to get Blood West and Evil West mixed up. I swear marketing teams do this on purpose. Blood West has a distinct art style which immediately differentiates it from its Weird West brethren. The retro pixel aesthetic smears shape and colour across familiar Wild West locations, but omits enough detail to let the imagination loose. This is a shooter on a budget, but the low fidelity captures the brooding tone in a way that flashy visuals can't. The Barren Lands are a muted place of moonlit terror, a place where true horror is seeing too much, a place where reality is a fuzzy, brain-damaged nightmare. Structures emerge from the oppressive gloom, looming, lingering, beckoning. Splintered, nail-ridden towns, ramshackle farms and hunter lodges. Mines and caverns which tunnel through the guts of this place, crawling with gluttonous parasites. Trains, their silent visage a reminder of lost civilization. Proud forts, crumbling under the insidiousness of the evil now stationed there. Many of the expected sights are here, and each tells a tale. The skeletons, disheveled cabins, and dismembered body parts give voice to the voiceless stories which present desperate last moments and fatalist resignation. Environmental storytelling is everywhere, and because much of it isn't explicitly told, it allows players to imagine the final moments as the curse overtook the townsfolk. Broken crates, piles of garbage, it all lends a distinctly neglected, disordered, and unclean feel. The sort of detail you expect from the disaster and post-apocalypse genres. There's no pride left in this place, no order, no humanity. Only decay and death remain. Occasional tales are penned on scraps of paper, deepening the terror residents must have felt as they slowly realised the unnatural phenomenon overtaking their patch of the world. The Boy and His Chickens, Timmy's Toy Train, the Order of the Iron Rose Expedition. They add a human touch to the otherwise abstract horrors these people endured. I wish there were more stories like this to draw me deeper into the world. As much as I relish the silent storytelling, there were times I wanted it to speak, times when a personal anecdote here or there would have elevated the scene. The serious exposition is reserved for the main quests. Each chapter is centered around simple item collection, then defeating a boss to lift the curse, but these tasks are presented in a way which is harmonious to the mystery of the Barren Lands. Each of the required items often have their own story, which is the bonus flavour I wanted more of from the setting. Bosses, surprisingly, are more than bullet sponges, with different attacks and phases which alter the moment-to-moment play and provide a decent challenge. They can be tough, especially for the unprepared, testing player skill, knowledge, and resource management. Each boss feels climactic, pitting the Gunslinger against forces well beyond his comprehension, embodied in their unholy avatar which towers above him. The main objective of each chapter foreshadows the magnitude of evil that the Gunslinger will face, building the tension. While the main objective drives each chapter, it never stands in the way of exploration. Completionists and the curious will be happy to know that most objectives can be completed by fully exploring the Barren Lands. There's no time pressure, and important items can be collected out of sequence. I love this freeform approach to gameplay. It never felt like I was wasting time when I roamed off the beaten track. I never had to fret over quests spawning items only when the game wanted me to collect them, like I'm some chronically online moron who needs to be told to put his underwear on before his pants. Blood West's colourful cast of NPCs press themselves upon the story and lore, weaving backstory into the rich potential of the narrative. The Totem of Souls, voiced by the exceptional Gianni Matrograno, is a guiding presence for much of the game, but other notable characters like the Doctor and Undead Gunslinger deliver welcome brevity. Characters from earlier chapters don't appear in consecutive ones, which makes the journey through the Barren Lands feel artificially segmented at times. It would have been great to see characters like the Shaman trail the Gunslinger as he carved a righteous swath through the infestation. The Gunslinger is a fiery, wry character, seemingly at home among the violence. He's a nameless hero trope, Clint Eastwood's man with no name in pixel perfection, the sort of tough-as-nails bloke who could strike a match on his 5 o'clock shadow. We get no backstory, and, like Blondie himself, none is needed. Actions speak louder than words, and it's refreshing to have a protagonist who strives for a simple task and isn't loaded with baggage. The mystery feeds his persona, is something he draws strength from. The Gunslinger's new life as an amnesiac undead allows for raw expression, and, like many of my favourite nameless heroes, I'm glad that Hyperstrange left him this way. Some mysteries are better preserved. Blood West's grim vision of a supernatural frontier is one of stark ugliness. The creatures which haunt the Barren Lands are perversions of the natural world. There's a touch of Lovecraftian familiarity in their warped bodies and hungry maws. The Innsmouth curse springs to mind. They aren't scary. The horror is more in the surprise, the sudden rush of combat and the flimsy state of life. Even the smattering of cryptid mythology can't evoke true horror. Raw horror could never work with such a power fantasy, with a predator such as the Gunslinger. That's why Resident Evil 4 is more suspense than horror. The fear is greatly diminished by a highly competent protagonist, one we know as the hero of the piece. Even Blood West's soundtrack evokes the swagger of a badass cowboy. Providing the rhythm for the swagger is the iconic twang of an electric guitar. Blood West's soundtrack is suitably dark and foreboding, while still hitting the familiar cowboy notes and string bends we know and love. It's great stuff, have a listen. The music perfectly encapsulates the tone of the setting, playing with themes of corruption and the sickly tone of the bell and the minor chords to create an unsettling, despondent atmosphere. It's a delight every time a track plays, and I mention this because there can be long silences between tracks with only the crickets and distant growls for company. I wanted more music from Blood West. The silence between tracks is necessary to let the environment settle into the player consciousness, but Blood West could benefit from an expanded track list and less downtime between tracks. An equivalent of Thief's ambient bassy hums could have worked wonders for the setting and filled the gaps. We do get similar sounds during some of the underground areas, so it's clear that Hyperstrange understood the tone of music required. I assume that the budget may not have stretched this far, and that's fair enough. Blood West is no lesser an experience for it. We can't have all this good without some bad and ugly. As it is, Blood West isn't perfect. It ran like a dream most of the time. There were only 2 issues which cropped up. The first was an animated dead frozen in place after I shot him. The second was when I got stuck in geometry. I did come unstuck eventually, but that was a long time to wonder if I'd have to reload the save. Those were minor issues and almost not worth mentioning, but I couldn't ignore the other problems. The first prominent issue is the story. There's a clear attempt to build a cohesive universe, one which could easily encompass a franchise of games in future. It's less prominent in chapters 1 and 2, but chapter 3 is where Hyperstrange found their stride, and where the narrative is strongest. Some will consider the list of stuff that follows nothing but nitpicks, but in a game with lore and story, they matter. I'll go through them in order and pick those nits. I was baffled at why the shaman went through the trouble of laying the Gunslinger to rest using a traditional native sky burial. It's a lot of respect and effort to go through while monsters roam the land. It's a noble gesture that I would have expected to have meaning to the plot or characters, perhaps implying the Gunslinger's heritage or that the shaman knows more about the Gunslinger than we assume, but it's never explored. In written fiction, such a sentimental action would likely be symbolic and hold a deeper meaning, showing us a connection between the Gunslinger and the shaman. Not so with Blood West. The moral conundrum of saving Annabelle or the priest is built up well, but quickly fizzles as soon as players realise that the priest is a coward who may not even be who he says he is. Annabelle, by contrast, is so pure of spirit that it's a clear-cut choice of good or evil. There are written notes which detail the priest's true nature, but he's a creepy two-faced creature without that exposition, and trusting him is a leap too far. This was a prime situation to twist the knife, to make both NPCs worthy of salvation, and to force players to pick along morally grey lines. As it stands, I wonder who is picked more often. The cutscene between chapters 2 and 3 depicts the Gunslinger and his new undead compadre travelling into the mountains when the Gunslinger triggers a landslide and is killed. This event is the catalyst for a sequence of events which draws the Totem of Souls back into the picture. Up to now, the Gunslinger has been a walking legend, a man whose caliber is measured in a barrel. And he does a whoopsie? This event is beyond the player's control and runs contrary to the Gunslinger legend. It also runs contrary to preceding events. The Gunslinger purged 2 areas of corruption, defeated 2 bosses, and I'm expected to swallow that he misstepped and brought a mountain down on him? This event weakens the Gunslinger's credibility, cheapens his mythos by attributing to him a clumsiness he hasn't demonstrated or earned. I felt cheated by this turn of events, especially having played so ruthlessly and stealthily up to this point. There's no reason this event needed to happen. There could have been other explanations for the Gunslinger's growing weakness, such as the magic which kept him alive fading due to his exertion, or something equally abstract. And it isn't like this vulnerability plays into the mechanical gameplay. It's there purely to drive the plot for Chapter 3. Blood West's ending is bleak and best described as Diablo with the implication scoured away. It didn't fit the snappy one-liners and dogged resilience of the Gunslinger, which I grew to love over the course of the game. It was so out of character to see our protagonist resign to a fate seemingly not already written in stone. This does call into question whether the cutscene was reality or fanciful prediction, but what's presented doesn't feel like a fitting end for our stoic protagonist. Unlike the warrior of Diablo, the Gunslinger revels in the death around him, seems to delight in purging the lands of evil, and never shies from a challenge. There's also no mention of the Gunslinger's companions during this cutscene, the people who would presumably stand with him in the fight against evil. Then again, the undead Gunslinger didn't lift a finger to help with the Chapter 3 boss, so who knows? Probably busy giving his mistress a bone. The ending leaves the plot wide open for a follow-up game or DLC, so here's hoping we get a more fitting end to this story sometime in the future. Update. Hyperstrange have released some juicy information, more on that near the end. The second prominent issue is the stealth system. Yeah, I glowed it up earlier, but I didn't say it was flawless. Sound propagation works in a basic radius around the player. However, it ignores walls, geometry, and other factors which would normally mute sound, meaning that the animated dead you can hear with perfect clarity is actually below you inside a cave. All the usual detection rules apply, meaning that players can aggro enemies in situations which should never occur. It stretches immersion in places, though it never kills the enjoyment and challenge. Visual stealth is something else. When I said that Blood West's stealth is rudimentary, I meant that it operates on some strange rules. Visual detection doesn't appear to be based on the entire player model so much as direct line of sight with the camera object, which is the player's point of view. What this means in practice is that I can hide behind a thin cactus with my arms, legs and G-string hanging out for all to see. As long as I don't have direct line of sight with the enemy's face, they'll never spot me. It's a weird system, which allowed me to pull off some hilarious stealth kills. It also makes some encounters feel cheap, since it can be easily, and sometimes unintentionally, cheesed to gain advantage in an encounter. I would love to hear how Hyperstrange designed this system, and whether they plan on implementing a more complex version in future. The third and final issue is narration and grammar, or translation to English. I'm unsure where this one falls. Many of the notes in the game, especially those describing the monsters, are poorly worded and lack narrative punch. Notes are the opportunity to present intriguing and unsettling lore, but some read like a dry, grammatically poor account of shooing the neighbor's dog while it took a shit on your lawn. I never slid to the edge of my seat while reading them. I never felt a tangible sense of danger, horror, or repulsion. Poor sentence composition makes for sloppy prose, which, dare I say, is synonymous with the Slavjank genre of games many are familiar with. I've read composition like this in other European games. Chances are you have too, and you know what I mean. Creative English wordsmithing could transform this prose into something players want to read and would actively seek out. This could be a translation issue, where the localization task was to simply translate Polish to English with no attempt to massage the prose post-translation. I suspect that this was exacerbated by limited time and funds, so I'm sympathetic to the effort Hyperstrange have put into notes and narration. I'd be much harsher if this work was from a AAA or high-budget AA studio. Vision and reality collide at some point when making video games, and that point happens to be much lower for indie games. What Blood West lacks in minor polish, it more than makes up for with ambition and good design. This is a studio who understand what makes a game fun, and they've loaded this game with their artistry. Blood West is a reverent callback to the stealth looters of old if they were made using modern design principles. The skill and artifact system greatly expand build options and playstyles. part of the magic is that there's no wrong way to play, and the build diversity encourages multiple playthroughs to plumb Blood West's mechanical depths. The layered gameplay loops are addictive, and stealth and loot aficionados will be at home wandering the barren lands, purging evil and sniffing out loot. ImSim connoisseurs will also find a lot to love, even though Blood West isn't a member of this exclusive club. Blood West is important because it does what AAA and even AA games can't do successfully: forge new creative ground in niche genres while delivering an experience which we're familiar with and which we love. The ugly truth is that games like Thief and System Shock appeal to a specific type of gamer. They're niche games with a much smaller market than Fortnite, Call of Duty, or Halo. It'd never be profitable for big companies with huge overheads to make something which attracted a fraction of the player base. And were they to get a shot, there would be other distractions from crafting an authentic experience. The last time Eidos Montreal took a crack at a Thief game, Thief 2014, it went so well that they were forced to shelve the IP indefinitely. Whatever you think of that game, it was a technical and mechanical mess, which sought, by design, to pedestal Garrett as a marketable gaming icon akin to Sam Fisher, Leon Kennedy, and Doomguy. Deeply ironic when considering Garrett's persona. They tried to cash in on a character without truly acknowledging who Garrett was and why he was so popular among fans. Furthermore, they didn't understand the magic of the Thief formula, as reflected in Thief 2014's level design, and it cost them the franchise. It's been over 10 years, with nary a peep on Thief's resurrection. Even with its limited budget and scope, Blood West is more Looking Glass Studios than Thief 2014 ever was. I've said that indies are the future of the industry, and that's a multifaceted statement, encompassing not only originality and creativity, but business agility and development approach. Hyperstrange didn't shove their fingers in their ears and pretend that their game was perfect. They listened to their players, considered the feedback, and implemented thoughtful solutions. The sheer self-indulgent arrogance of some large development studios is a testament to how insular AAA development has become. Nothing good is born in an echo chamber, and this will inevitably play out in the shrinking income of large studios as indies move in en masse to gorge on player interest. Big budget developers are not only competing for consumer money, more important, they're also competing for a consumer's time, a commodity that even the wealthiest gamers have a limited supply of. I don't like talking about this. I don't like seeing our industry labour. I'd rather talk about amazing games made by passionate developers, but the problems have become impossible to ignore. In the land of Oz, speaking down to your customers and belittling them lands you in the unemployment line, and rightfully so. There are employees in every business whose job it is to tactfully handle PR and consumer criticism. This topic is worth a whole video on its own. I don't know how financially successful Blood West was, but I want to see more of the Gunslinger. I want to see Hyperstrange make a successful franchise out of the solid foundation they've built with Blood West. I want to see an expanded and refined Blood West 2, and I'd love for it to reach the mainstream consciousness. That last is a little ambitious, but Hyperstrange are clearly equipped for the challenge. Blood West isn't done either. Hyperstrange have already announced exciting new content for the game. They're playing the hand close to their chest, but the rumours I've heard are exciting indeed. There's already a big bang for your buck, with average completion times around 25 hours, more if you enjoy exploring. The new content could potentially expand that metric, which is enough to get me excited.
Future Blondie here. Of course Hyperstrange released more info on the DLC while I was making this video. That's what I get for taking too long. The news is big. Hyperstrange have partnered up with... you can't make this up. New Blood. Yes, the same guys making the Thief with Guns game. It's a fitting partnership. Furthermore, we got a new trailer which revealed the new protagonist, a new map, new skills, new weapons, new enemies, and I'm really excited for this one. The gameplay showcased a voodoo flavor, and none other than the Shadowman himself, Red Pepper, voicing the protagonist. I'll leave a link to the DLC trailer in the description. Check it out. Back to you, Past Blondie.
Blood West is more than a quaint indie game. It's the revival and evolution of the stealth genre we've been waiting for, achieving what AAA is no longer willing to touch. It isn't alone either. There are plenty of promising stealth-based indie games in development, including Retrospace, Gloomwood, and Serpent's Eternal Thievery. You can grab Blood West on Steam and GOG. There are links for both in the video description. If you enjoy it, drop a review and tell them that Blondie sent you. A fistful of thank yous to the supporters who brought you this video. You guys are incredible and you know it. If you enjoyed this video, then fan the hammer on the like button. If you dig my style, subscribe to the channel. It helps jog the algorithm's memory that small creators like me exist. If and you'd be so kind, dynamite the Blondie experience across the infinitely expanding cyberverse. Share with other communities and like-minded enthusiasts. Remember the cant. Until next video, partners.